There were so many that lost their businesses during that time.
Welcome to Spotlight Publishing. We are here with J.W. Wilson, and who's obviously not here is Becky. And I have the great honor and opportunity to run her show for a couple of events today and next show on Monday. So welcome. Thanks for joining us live or at some point in recording. We are super excited about today's show. We've got JW for this show and a little bit of next show. So JW, welcome. And how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you. I'm here in Richmond, Virginia. What you're in
Phoenix, Arizona. Yeah.
We cooler here.
Well, it's gorgeous right now. This is the time of year you want to be here. And so, yes, and that's a great little segue into how I know Becky, which is I have the honor to work with her and a pleasure to be partnered with her in business. She's a client of mine. I'm a client of hers. So it's a very symbiotic relationship. So that's really fun. But just one of the greatest human beings I've ever had a chance to meet. And it's Becky who brought us together. So pretty exciting. So I'd love to hear, just to start, your story of how you met Becky and why you've chosen her, because over the course of this hour, we're going to talk a lot about your business and your book and your vision and your passion. But let's start with, how do you know Becky?
Well, let me just start. I'm the executive director of the Learning Code Institute, where we've done research on the basis of the genetic program that helps us learn, change our behaviors, and motivate ourselves. We found there's about 6,000 genes that control neurological function. And when those genes are turned on, or even a small percentage are turned on, they literally express proteins and enzymes in your brain that change the shape of your brain, which changes your behaviors. So we've got about 20 books and online programs coming out in different areas, from addiction to health to education. And Becky and I met through a fellow, John Anderson, a really great guy who'd helped us getting started with some of the things that we were doing, setting up some of our foundation for our business, who used to do nuclear submarines. So he would set those up. So when you made a mistake, they'd blow up. So he was very good at helping us. So he introduced me to Becky, and immediately Becky and I hit it off. We've got a book coming out called Cracking the Learning Code, which many believe it'll be the definitive book on understanding the biological basis of how to change behaviors and learn quicker, faster. And when Becky saw it and I saw Becky, we immediately saw we could bond together. And with her experience in book publishing, book marketing, those kinds of things, and what we were doing really in biology, which I know it sounds scientific, but the way we do it, anybody can understand it. So that's how we met, and it's been great ever since. And then Becky introduced me to you. Becky's a real networker. She's introduced me to about 5 or 6 people that have been just tremendous. And I feel so blessed to have kind of entered her network to help us launch Cracking the Learning Code, this first book out to the world.
Yeah, that's great. And you're absolutely right. Becky is a master networker. And when you and I had a chance to spend a couple days with her about a weekend ago, and one of the things that I loved is she tells her personal story as she evolved from the saw business to other sharpening skills and other businesses. And we've both talked about and joked about with her is that now she's sharpening people's words in books. And
Yes.
as an author and as a publisher, Spotlight Publishing has brought so many people's books to life. In fact, we were talking about over 300, right? And she mentioned that she had over 300.
Many bestsellers, many Amazon bestsellers. Yes.
Exactly. And so,
most.
so this is a great chance. At Becky's show, we're going to talk about Becky for a little bit. So I want to continue that thread because, not only she accomplished all of those things, but one of the goals that she has, we look for the next few months, years, is really hone in on helping others really get their message out. Right. So one of the things that brought us together in a meeting, the fact that I'm focused on creating visibility for clients digitally as digital agency at Shape. You as an author are trying to help people learn, and then she is basically bringing us together with all of her community and experts. So anybody in particular that stands out in terms of experts or expertise around Becky that you want to highlight and just kind of share about, more about who she is and how she connects people?
Well, with Becky has kind of an intuitive feel. When I do this research, everybody, you usually think about the words intuition, and it's kind of an airy-fairy thing. But what we're finding is those intuitive feels fit into something that we learned from quantum physics, which is the quantum field, where everything is connected. We kind of live in a particle world. Quantum physics has two sides, has the particle side and the wave side. An atom has two choices. It can be in a particle state, which you can hit something really hard and see it and touch it and feel it. And then when it's in the wave state, it spreads out all over the universe all at once. I know it sounds crazy, but the Copenhagen Agreement in the 1930s basically proved it. And that's what Einstein and all these other guys were involved in. And what Becky has is an intuitive knowingness about how to take a book, how to take an idea and help the author get it out to the world so it makes an impact in the world. Not just about making money, but about making an impact that helps change the world. So she's really a change agent. And authors that are looking to make a change or to get their information out and have something happen within somebody emotionally, spiritually, physiologically, Becky is really gifted at being able to do that, not only from the particle side where she knows exactly how to do it and bring in the right people like you and now me to help her do that. But a lot of other people. I just met with a guy named Charles George, who is, kind of a wizard at doing this kind of stuff also. So Becky has a great team that can really help any author catapult themselves into really another reality where they're getting what they've been looking for.
Yeah, and I want to touch base on a bit of her intuition part, and specifically in what we've collectively talked about, but what I'd like, kind of behind her back, we're talking about her. What I love Becky because her heart is, and we've heard this say, but I've heard other people say things like this, heart's as big as her body. She really wants to help. She really wants to make a difference. And what I've seen with the people that she's brought into my life, both her clients and other partners, is that she constantly and consistently looks to create value, but also has, as you say, that intuitive node and the intuitive knowing that this is going to serve their soul, right? And so,
that's right.
And what I do love about that vision is I think it's aligned with you and I. So I'm bringing us back into this, but you and I with, we're here to help people show up the way they need to show up in their lifetime and in their opportunity. And for now and forever, people are going to want to hold a book, look at a book, read a book, and be at peace with a book. And I think that's one of the things that Becky really brings to the table is she's creating the continuation of legacy in book publishing, but she's doing it with a heart. Right. And so I just really want to honor her and again thank her for the opportunity to be here with you today, because I love, you're one of my shining stars in terms of people that I've wanted to meet all my life. Somebody who has a mission and a passion and a vigor for making change and being a change agent, as is Becky. But what I do love about our relationship is that we're connected because of her. And we're going to be more successful because of her. So
that's exactly right.
Any thoughts on that topic?
No, it's just, I kind of go, everybody thinks it's kind of spiritual, but it's really scientific. Can you hold a second? I'm in a conference room. I got to close this door. I'll be right back.
Absolutely. So here we are with JW and the world traveler. Becky's actually out on vacation with family, and so we're hoping and wishing, if she's watching, that she's having a fabulous time. So yeah, we're very pleased, and that relates to JW. I'll come back to you in a second. But one of the things about personally we all have to focus on is self-care and alignment, and so Becky's certainly doing that and spending time with her family, which is ultimately why we all work. Some sort of why is tied to our friends and family. So, JW, you were saying something. You wanted to finish the thought?
Well, kind of what Becky's been able to do. We met last week. I do a thing called the neurogenetics of marketing and branding, and Becky brought a lot of her team in, and we talked about how to use the latest neuroscience to get people to lean into your products and services, so that your response rate goes up, your engagement goes up. If you have follow-up books, how that goes up. And it was a tremendous opportunity. And what Becky tends to have going to this intuitive thing, she also has kind of this desire to help others. Yes, profit is important, money is important, but she has put values ahead of profit. She has put relationship ahead of profit. And what that does is that tends to attract people to her that feel the same way. Really, you know people that are chasing money and how they, it's I need, it's a forceful kind of thing. And what she does is she opens up the space so people can relax. Yeah, we all want to have money selling our books. That's why we're writing the daggone things, as well as getting the information out. But she's able to balance that really well, probably better than anybody I've met out there that's doing what she's doing. So she's a real gift to be able to work with. I mean, I'm not sure exactly who's watching this show at the moment, exactly the audience, but I'm sure there are a lot of authors. But it's worth it to talk to Becky about, to understand really how to take what you have in your heart and your soul, even if you haven't written a book yet, and turn it into a book. And if you have written one, how to get it out to the world with the energy that is inside of you.
Right, and I think that the point that I continue to make with her is that she does, as you said, she doesn't have a scarcity mindset. Look, we all need money, we all need things to do, but she does attract the people that are actually all about doing good first and being more of a servant leader first. And as a result of that, we all get the benefit of the collaboration. But I want to hone in and get your thoughts around this really important message, because I think it ties into this. We'll come back to it in a second segment. But I really love the concept of somebody learning and understanding themselves better, or more importantly, how they go in process learning, which we'll get into. But I also really want to tie that into, if you have that awareness or an enlightened understanding, as I might refer to it as, your message and your story is so compelling and so important. And I think that's the other thread that Becky that helps bring to life. And I just want to revisit this is, when you're telling your story, you're telling it because there's somebody else that needs to hear it. Somebody else needs to read it, and it needs to land for people. So I think the beautiful part about your work, your body of work, in connection with Becky's ability to bring things to paper and bring things to life with marketing and tools, is that it's the individual's message. And we're in an age, I believe the Aquarian age, where we're all here to help and serve each other. And so I love the idea that if you can learn more and understand yourself more, combine that with putting it on paper, that this is the call to authors. This is the call to individuals. This is the call to those who are listening to this. And if there's only one person today that watches this show, JW, and says, I have this message, I have this meaning, I need to get it out, what would you say to them?
Well, without being sales directed, I mean, we all run around. Let me just go back a little bit. Our educational system, when we were in education, we may be able to go into this in another segment, never asked us what was meaningful to us. They told us what should be meaningful to us. And what they told us was, what was meaningful to us? A's. Get an A. Pass. Get to the next grade.
Right.
That's external, right? Really, where meaning, it comes from inside of us. We're born with an overabundance of neurons in one part of our brain that nobody else on the planet has in the exact location of ours, which makes each person on the planet a genius that our neighbor is not, at something special. Now, what happens is you get about 20 watts of power through your carotid vertebral artery, and that's naturally going to your gift as a child. So that's why they're running around the floor, they're playing. Some kids are banging on drums. Some kids are drawing stuff. Some kids are out in the backyard playing soldier. But basically what they're doing is they're self-regulating their own learning. I don't know if you know this, but you come out of the womb babbling. But by the time you're 7, depending on the environment you grow up in, you'll know 30,000 to 100,000 words without ever taking a test. You learned all those words. Why did you learn them? Because you followed what was deeply meaningful to you inside. That gift, you were satiating that gift. The 20 watts of power was going to it. It was throwing off dopamine, serotonin, all these joy molecules. You look at a child, they don't walk across the street. They dance across the street. They don't listen to music. They become the music. Now, that is such a gift. Now, at 7 years old, we say, no more self-directing your learning on meaning. You just do what we tell you to do for the next, depending on how long you're in school, 12 to 20 years. And you do exactly what we want because we want it done that way. We then shift that blood flow away from that gift that makes you a genius at something that somebody else isn't, and we shift it to another area of your brain, usually in the left temporal lobe where words and finite math are. So what do you think happens to that gift when we redirect the blood flow and the nourishment away from it for 12 to 15 years? It starts to atrophy. It starts literally, it gets smaller. And then you graduate from school and say, okay, what do you want to be, Bobby? What do you want to be, Alice? And you go, I don't really know. And then you start chasing the money. And that's when you get in trouble. Because a lot of times the way to make money is to find out what's meaningful to you and then do that so you get more money. Meaning helps you add value to the world. The more value you add to the world, the more green energy you get back in the form of money or other things. And that's what Becky, that was a long explanation to explain kind of what Becky helps authors do.
Well, I love it because I'm going to bring it back in this segue here is to this. Meaning, the definition of meaning is going to be something different to each one of us. But the definition of meaning and purpose is why I believe authors should write their book or get it out of their system. There's also the catharticism and the benefits of just getting it out of your system, right? Getting out of your writing and making something happen. So I would like you to just, as we finish up sort of this first segment, really focus on how does somebody find their meaning, right? Through their learning code, for example, and then really translate that into why should they write their book, right? So we'll come into the second segment here, but I really want to let's get them into meanings, get everybody hooked and like, hey, this is why you should be doing what you should be doing. And then we'll talk about your why, and then we'll come back to how do we help others?
Well, it's a very interesting question. So the first thing is, if you already don't, I'm guessing that a lot of the people that are watching this show already have an idea of what's meaningful to them because they're thinking about putting it into a book or they already have.
Correct.
So, but how do we refine that so that you're even more impactful in the world? I think understanding that when we come out of the school system, unless we're a school teacher or an engineer, which do very well outside of the system as well as in the system, what we found is that when you come out of the system, because that blood flow has been directed away from it, we're not quite sure what's meaningful to us. We're not, and so as I said, those locus of neurons, and I talk like it's in one place, but it's spread out, but it's a locus of neurons that have been atrophied somewhat. The key is, how do we satiate those neurons? A fascinating thing, a synapse, it hangs out on the branch of a neuron called a dendrite. And really the stuff that was meaningful to you doesn't disappear. It just, if it's not stimulated, it just recedes back into the cellular wall. It's there waiting to pop back out. So how do we do that? Well, a really interesting way is through meditation and mindfulness. A lot of these spiritual practices in our book, Cracking the Learning Code, that's coming out in June, basically we have chapters on exactly how to reactivate that gift that you're giving through meditation and mindfulness. And this is not the kind of meditation where you got to sit down for 4 hours and meditate. If you only do 5 minutes in the morning and 5 minutes at night, or 5 minutes every day, starting with guided, what it does is it increases a neurotransmitter called acetylcholine. Acetylcholine is the primary neurotransmitter of these slow wave states that we get in meditation. These are very slow, 10 cycles a second, very slow to 1 or 2 cycles a second. You probably heard of them, alpha, theta, delta waveforms. And they're very slow. And when you meditate and you're mindful, this is when you're awake and you're aware of what you're doing, the brain breaks into spindles of these slower wave states that literally is like fertilizer for your meaningful gift to come back out of the cellular wall. And it's very powerful. And if people just start doing a little of that, what's going to happen to them is not only are they going to get closer to what's meaningful to them, and then their path in life will start to shift. But another fascinating thing happens, and this is where we get into the quantum. Your vibratory frequency begins. I know this sounds airy-fairy, but it's true. Your vibratory frequency, you hang around happy people and you get happy. You hang around depressed people and you get depressed. They don't even have to talk. You can feel it. That's that vibratory frequency. You take a tuning fork and you bang it, and you take another one next to it that you haven't banged, and what happens? They resonate. They don't touch, but the vibratory frequency, they resonate at the same frequency. Our bodies and our thoughts are the same way. And trying to change your thoughts is very difficult. But when you meditate, you go into these more mindful states, literally the natural process of transformation that allows yourself, it's almost like fertilizer on a flower. It allows your true self to emerge. Your vibratory frequency changes, your ability to track that which serves you increases. Like, matter of fact, I was doing something. I know all the science, but I still screw up just like anybody else. I was trying to get on a plane. I was in a hurry. I had to rent a car, and I was not in a relaxed alpha state. I was in a wild man state. And, I lost where's my briefcase? I lost the keys to the car. I couldn't find the contract, right? That's what happens. We attract our own craziness, but we're not aware of it. So what Becky is doing and helping people to do, and what we do at the Learning Code Institute, is we look at these more kind of scientific bases of how to transform ourselves without struggle.
Yeah, love it. So in summary, for those who are joining us for live now or in the past, we've really just kind of riffed for the last 20 minutes around why we love Becky, why Spotlight Publishing is such a great organization and connector. We also have been talking about how to get purpose and meaning out of life using the Learning Code. More on that coming, but also really important to find the right time and place to get your message out and be heard. So for you authors or want to be authors, definitely come back, definitely connect with Becky. We'll share her information. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back, and we're going to go hard to the end of the show, and we're going to come back and go to understand your why and a little bit of your story, because your story is fascinating as to then leading into the book. So hang on. We'll be right back in about a minute. Thanks, everybody. Welcome back.
That was great.
Isn't that fun? So I'm like a kid in a candy store. I got my little control center. I've got all this stuff I'm doing. Becky, we may never invite Becky back. We'll see what happens. Spotlight on us. Anyway, I'm Lorenzo Hickey, founder of Shapeshift World. I'm with J.W. Wilson, the founder and owner of the Learning Code Institute. What a great time we're going to have, because now we're going to hear the story. We're going to hear the JW, why you're doing what you're doing, how you got to that space, and really just want to get to know you. So walk us through, how you got to this place where you're bringing this to life. That'd be great to hear.
I don't know. After I get through, you may not want to get to know me. So really, I grew up and I think this happens to a lot of us that have had stresses in our lives or trauma in our lives. I grew up in a pretty crazy household. Both my parents were alcoholics and drug addicts, though functioning. Christmas, somebody was always knocking the Christmas tree into the fireplace. My father was accused of murdering my mother. So there was a lot of drama in my house. I was mainly raised by two black ladies who I'm so gifted, Claudia Sanchez and Mary Wood, that really helped me, get a spiritual part of my life. I'd go to church with them and stuff. I was the only white kid in these black churches. Everybody screaming and falling on the floor. It was great. And so I had a kind of an eclectic upbringing, and was pretty lost. I was a business development guy. I developed a bunch of business, television, publishing, training, travel, a lot of different things. A little hyperactive, so I was always kind of going from one to the other. I was very lucky in the business part, but internally I was a mess. I just happened to watch there was a guy named Merv Griffin who had a television show that people over 50 will remember, but it was a talk show, kind of like Oprah had before Oprah. And Clint Eastwood came on and talked about meditating. And I was working on Madison Avenue at the time. And I go, wow. And my thought was, well, if I meditate, I'll get over my hangovers quicker. I wasn't too conscious at the time. I wasn't too conscious. But I started doing it. And slowly, I started to, in a way, heal myself. I didn't know there was anything wrong with me. I just thought I was a wild man that drank a lot. I was okay in business, but I wasn't ever good inside. And so what happened to me was, as I meditated more and more, I did TM, which it was big back in the 80s and early 90s, and transcendental meditation. And I started to see myself change. And more importantly, I started to see other people around me change who I hung around with. I played rugby for a long time, and a lot of those guys are pretty crazy. They're not definitely spiritual. And so they are more now, though, I got to say. The newer kids are much more than when I was doing it. But what I found was I just started to slowly change. Things started to come to me that I hadn't seen before without even trying. And one time I'm in my office, and I was, mainly doing I probably produced over 1,000, 1,500 television shows and commercials. And I was in my office, and I had talked to a buddy of mine named Marshall Thurber, and he shifted my mindset about what I could be in the world. And he had a course called Money and You at the time that I had gone to. And it made me think about what was really meaningful to me. And what I started doing was a guy named Peter Drucker had said, we're in a knowledge society, which in the 80s seems silly now. But before we thought we were in an industrial society. The more machines, the better. Right. And so he said, no, we're in a knowledge society. And I woke up one morning after meditating, I said, man, if we're in a knowledge society, the number one asset you can have is your ability to learn. So I bought every book there was in 1985. I thought every book anyway. I bought every book there was and went up to the mountains outside of Honolulu to read them all. Do you know how many there were?
I'm guessing it's less than 10.
There were 5. Learning on both sides of your brain, mind mapping, super learning, The Learning Revolution by Janet Voss. There were some really, really interesting books. I came back after 2 weeks. First of all, my office had thought I'd lost my mind. I said, look, guys, we're no longer in the ad business. We're in the learning business. And everybody that watches one of our commercials is going to learn how to buy a product. And I just thought, what the heck is this guy talking about? So I started doing that at the time with our television and publishing. We had a publishing business. We represented everything from the Paris Match, the Washington Post. We had 65 publications. We had an office in the Pacific for these publications where we did editorial for some and advertising for others. Anyway, I had a great blowtorch, a great megaphone to try this stuff out with. And I got my office involved in it. And we started looking at advertising as a form of learning, as a form of marketing and transforming brain structures instead of just throwing stuff, you got to hear something 6 times before you buy it, all that kind of stuff, which is not true at all. So, but we started to break the myths, but then we got very effective at starting to use this information from these 5 or 6 books in what we were doing. And then I got the idea. I said, God, if we're doing so well with this, and I personally started to change because of it.
Yeah.
I started to think, well, what would happen if we got it to more people? But I think it needs science. Most of the people that were writing these books were not scientists. They were intuitives that had kind of stumbled on an idea. And so I went to Harvard, I went to the Salk Institute, I went to MIT. There was a guy named Howard Gardner who did the 7 Intelligences. I went to his office at Harvard. I went to the Salk Institute. I went to all these places. And my idea is to bring some scientists together and figure out how do we unlock. I didn't know there was 6,000 genes at the time, but how do we unlock this code inside of us so all of us can learn what we need to learn so we can be more of what we need to be in the world?
Mm-hmm.
And I started off like that. And ever since then, it was partially because I finally found something that was meaningful to me. Yeah, I had the big car, I had a house in Kahala, I had all the crap, but I wasn't happy. Right. And so now all of a sudden I was doing something that just felt so rich inside of me, which I never ever felt before. So anyway, that's how I kind of got here, and I just haven't stopped.
I love that. So for me, the parallel is to find that alignment, and I often refer to it as a soul alignment, so that when you get up in the morning, that you're really in a flow, you're really in a meaningful state of mind, and that by definition in my world starts with giving. Right. It starts with learning. It starts with being grateful for things. And so would love to get your thoughts around that journey and where there maybe was a pivot point. I know we talked about our meetings about pivot points and moving those. Where might there have been a pivot point in your life when you realized that transitioning to learning and meaning then brought meaning to your life so you could teach what you know, and now you're in the process of starting to really live a magnificent life that I think just may be the life that you were called to do, but you needed to get here, right? So you want to speak to any of those things?
Yeah, there are a lot of speed bumps on the way.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think as I continued to meditate, as I continued to follow what was meaningful to me, I didn't change overnight. I would still develop businesses because of the adrenaline rush it gave me, make things happen in different arenas. I probably did 25 startups. And I didn't like safety, quite frankly. I liked the risk. Not all of us are that way. There's a bell curve in our species. Some of us are way out here, the risk takers. They may do very well, like the Jobs and the Wozniaks and the Dells and the Allens and the Ted Turners, but nobody talks about the other 50 million that got killed, right? It's like on the wagon train, they were the scouts that went first, but biologically we're wired. Some of us are wired to be innovators and early adapters. The guys out there first, that we get killed first, but then the early majority and the majority play it a lot safer, but they're the ones that make things work in the world. So really, when you look at the species, we have human species. We have different neurological makeups, different genetic kind of predispositions that allow us to fit within our species. When everybody thinks Darwin said survival of the fittest meant biggest biceps or the fleetest feet. He did not mean that at all. There was a guy named Herbert Spencer back then who was an economist, and he interpreted Darwin's work as the strongest will survive and kick everybody else's butt. Darwin didn't mean that. What he meant survival of the fittest was a different term for fitness. It was the shape of the beak of the finch that allowed it to reach into a tree curved and eat the right insects. So what he was meaning was that the individuals that best fit the existing environment were the ones that survived the greatest. He was talking about species in general.
Right.
What I found was that inside of each one of us, this gift I was talking about, the more that we could understand how our gift fit within the species so that we could get more of what was meaningful and joyful to us, then we were able to continue on a path in the face of all sorts of adversities. And so what happened was, from biology going way back and looking at Darwin with survival of the fittest, those of us that are able to fit not only what's meaningful to us, but take that and fit the existing environment. Like now, we got the web. Right now, knowledge is doubling once every 12 to 18 months. When you and I were in school, it was doubling once every 50 years. So you can't use the strategies to learn and transform that are 50 years old in a world where information is doubling every 12 months.
Yeah, hear that.
So we need to be very adaptable. So I found that the more adaptable we were, the more we could touch what was meaningful to us, and the more we could fit the environment, not be resistant to change, but be part of the change and add value to the change, then the quicker we're able to make an impact in the world.
Yeah, I love it. And as you look at the body of work that you have, and I'm going to come back to my core question is what made you pivot? When did you? Because you're obviously a learner, a consistent learner, a researcher. You love action and activity, right? Because part of that early the leaders and the scouts, as you refer to them, are the people that are action takers. They really want to get things done and are bored easily, right? Because you really you've got a busy mind. But what was the pivot point? And when you said, you know what, I've got to turn this into something that is almost more legacy, right? And make an impact. And that's now you're going from meaning to movement, right? So where is it? Where are we on that pivot point, and what brought you from meaning to movement at this point?
Write that down. I'm going to use that. Meaning to move. That was good.
That's my skill set.
It's good. That was good.
Creativity.
Yeah. So really what happened to me was I met a guy named Marshall Thurber who had a course, Money and You. He said it was all about money. And at the time I ran this television and publishing business, I was in Hawaii, and I went, oh, a course about money, I'll take it. Well, the truth was it had very little about money and everything about meaning, who you were in the world, how you were going to change things. And it made a huge impact on me, huge impact. I recognized that chasing the money was not giving me anything. You know, I had the bling, but I was empty inside. And I didn't really realize I was empty inside because the feedback from everybody else was, this guy's got it together, you know, and I didn't have it together at all. And I knew inside I didn't have it together, but it looked like I had it outside. So as I started to recognize I didn't really, in a way, I was living a lie. I mean, I just started feeling there's got to be something more. And I just wanted a quest to find that more. And by chance, when I figured out that I was a mess inside and I needed to find more, it kind of dovetailed with the science of learning. When I recognized that learning was a new asset, not necessarily knowledge. And the faster you could accelerate your speed of learning, the more knowledge you could acquire and the better you would fit the environment. Oh, my heavens. Now I started shifting. I started to drink less, chase a lot less of the wrong women. I met a great woman, my wife, Debbie, who I'm so blessed for. I got a lot of holes, and a lot of people think I got my act together now. I don't. And, you know, she helps me balance out. And I've got a really wonderful life, but I have a wonderful life because I was able to identify what was meaningful to me and then go after it. And that's why I recommend there's a video by Simon Sinek about the big why that I think some incredible amount of people, like 50 million people, have watched. I have yet to find one person that has followed what he says in the video. It's a great video because information doesn't cause transformation. You have to do something else in the world with the information, in the real world, with your life and others before the neurological transformation really works. If information caused transformation, all that stuff you memorized in school, you would remember and it would have transformed you. It didn't. You forgot 98% of it, all those things you memorized. So what I've found is that these more spiritual approaches, really that are basically more scientific approaches, allow us to make transformations in our lives that really not only transform ourselves, but because of the quantum, transforms others because of the vibratory frequency, and in the end, transforms the world without really having to do much at all.
Yeah. It's all innate, right? We're already programmed and prepared to do the things that we need to do to make an impact. Let me move into a new segment, but before I do that, I'm going to close with what I really loved about your kind of most recent riff about meaning and creating purpose and then turning that into a movement for you, is that the authors and the people that are watching this show need to understand that in that personal journey, wherever they are, that ultimately going from meaning and purpose to writing your book, that's the impact or the movement that you can create. So again, I always want to tie it back to the author of this show and Becky, and how as a result of you taking action as an author or prospective author or an existing author and rewriting that book or writing the memoir, writing the thing that you always wanted to write, but you didn't write yet because you did it for business purposes or whatever. I'm just going to encourage you in this segment to realize, hey, if there's real meaning in what you're doing and it's not out there yet, you need to take that action and you take that step.
It's kind of that, a journey of 1,000 miles starts with that first step.
First step, exactly.
The problem that most of us have, now this is where we get damaged by the educational system. The educational system gives you a negative for mistakes. We didn't get them to the moon overnight. We made a lot of mistakes. When I have these meetings, there was a guy, Eric von Braun, who developed the first rocket, the U-2 rocket or V-2 rocket in Germany. And one time he's building the rocket and the Nazis came down and, he's in the basement putting all his stuff together and he's launched these rockets and they keep blowing up and going in the wrong direction and things aren't working. And they came down to him and, he was Jewish. So, his life was on the line. He better make the rocket work or he was next in the oven. And so Eric von Braun, they ask him, they go, dude, you've made 10,000 mistakes building these rockets. This is over. And he looked at him and he said, look, I've made 10,000 mistakes. It takes 15,000 mistakes to build the kind of rocket you're looking for. I need to make 5,000 mistakes before we build the next perfect rocket. And I've always used that in that story in what I do. Because what the educational system does is it's don't make mistakes. You can't make a mistake. You can't be wrong. You're going to get an F. Well, there's no change in the world if we don't make those mistakes. The stirrup, the light bulb, somebody just didn't come up with that idea. They made 1,000 mistakes first. So we need to embrace these mistakes, love these mistakes, thank God for these mistakes, because they're what leading us into the promised land. And what we need to do is have the perseverance. And the grit is, I watched a YouTube thing on grit. The lady went through the whole thing. Very great presentation, by the way. But she never explained exactly where you get grit. She said the people that have grit, blah, blah, blah. Well, grit comes from meaning. Like I've got 1,400 footnotes in this book. Now, any schmo can read this book. The first 10 pages of every chapter, anybody can read. And then it gets more scientific. And I have little icons that say you can stop reading now or go deeper if you need more science. So, but what I found was that grit came from meaning. It came from knowing why you exist in the world. It came from your beingness. And we have an educational system that doesn't teach any of us who we are at our core. So most of us aren't in touch with our beingness. So we run around taking all these wrong places that aren't even good mistakes because they're not mistakes leading us in a great direction because we don't know what direction we want to go in.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I love it because one of the things that we talked about, I have been saying for years, sort of energetically, I know that when you learn things at a cellular level. And for me, the transformation that I went through, and one of the books, the reason I know Becky is because I have 3 books on pen to paper so far, and some collaborative books. But what I've done is really focused on my own transformation, and that was getting out of my head, into my heart, and then into my soul. But then I now transform that to say, no, what really the all meaning of all of this is to get it at a cellular level. And that's when those mistakes, those learnings, and those things that you teach about, which is what I loved. You brought science to my words, and that's what I have such an appreciation for you as a human being, is that we're so compatible, but yet we came at it from very different. Mine was the school of hard knocks. Like I just kept working and kept falling down until I could fall forward and then figure out where I could actually not fall, just stumble, right? But that was me going through massive change and challenges in my life. But what I love, and I'd like to kind of talk about is your book and your launch activities as we start to close this section today, and really talk about what it means to learn things quickly and effectively, and then the different categories of areas that learning and meaning is on your list of to-dos. And that we'll talk about collaboration and what we're doing just in closing, but just kind of take us through that quick little roadmap and what you're building, because it's so impactful in so many different areas, JW.
Yeah. So yes, our book is coming out. Now here's a fascinating thing. The key to learning is firing as many neurons as possible. That's why you remember your first kiss and not your last history class. Which one fired more neurons, right? So yeah, and so you got to tell me the story about your first kiss. I bet there's a real story.
We're leaving that one. That's
Right
off topic. Off topic.
So anyhow, what really we need to do is find out what is most meaningful to us that nobody ever asked us. Mm-hmm. So we need to take a little time, and this doesn't happen overnight. Because what we do is, I got to have a big house, or I got to have a good car, and to do that, I got to make a lot of money, because we think the car and the house will make us money. I know a lot of multimillionaires, more even than multimillionaires. They got all the right cars, all the right houses, all the right everything. Are they happy? Some are, but most are not at all, and they keep chasing the golden ball. Because they think the dollar or the A, it's like they chased in school, the A is going to make them happy. And so I don't know if you know this, but valedictorians, a lot of valedictorians, some of their biggest problems are they're able to get A's and to get a job really quickly, but their ability to get meaning in their life can often escape them. Because when we get the A's, it's an egoic thing, like what I was doing with the right car, the right house, the right penthouse office. It all looked good, but was it really creating inside of me what I was really looking for? And when I mean inside of me, just as an idea, do you know where 70% of your serotonin is, which helps make you happy?
I have a good idea. It's not in our brain.
It's in your gut. Yeah, it's in your stomach. So that's why you get upset to your stomach when you're under stress and all these other things happen. So we have these concepts that the more we get, the happier we'll be. And all you got to do is look around at the level of unhappiness in the world. I think it's almost 66% of people, no matter what they have, say they're not happy as they'd like to be. So the systems that we've been using to try to make us happy have not made us happy. They've really made us the opposite. They made us neurotic and stressful, where we can't get off our freaking phones and we can't get out of our office meetings until we're all crazy. And we keep doing it. And literally our educational system helped us create an environment where chasing the A's have made us all a little crazy in our real lives. Because here's an interesting thing. By the time in your early, out of toddlerhood, you got about 15,000 connections per neuron. Right now, do you know how many connections per neuron you have?
Right now, after 15,000, I got to think it's still up there. 10, no, 12?
About 5,000.
No.
Because after about those connections are there waiting to suck in the information from the environment. This is why if we grow up in Serbia, we become Serb. We grow up in Norway, we become Norwegian. We need to be able to fit our environment. So when we're born blobs of protoplasm that are citizens of the world. We're not Japanese, we're not Lebanese, we're not Islamic, we're not Christian. We're just this blob of protoplasm, which then our environment begins to shape. Because starting around 7 to 11, the body starts releasing some chemicals that literally start wiping out the connections that already haven't been wired up. So if you've been wired up through the school system with those 15,000 and we're starting to wipe them out, and you think A's are the answer, you think being the captain of your football team is the answer, it could be fun at the time and it's egoic. But is it going to give you the transformation within inside yourself that's going to allow you to live a life of joy, filling, and fulfillment and meaning? Not really, because most of us don't feel that. So literally, we've got an educational system that, from the eyes of neurobiology, have literally damaged our ability to find meaning in our lives. And once we get that and stop chasing the golden ball and start having a higher purpose. We call it at the Institute your noble cause. What is your noble cause? What is meaningful, right? When you're in ego, literally you're in the lower part, least evolved part of your brain, down in what's called your limbic and reptilian brain areas. And when you're chasing what's meaningful to you, it activates a part of your brain, believe it or not, called the ventral mental prefrontal cortex, where your third eye is. It's where the ancients have been saying spirituality is forever. So when we start shifting from chasing the golden ball to the dollar to chasing what's meaning, we literally shift the blood flow from the least evolved part of our brain to the most evolved part of our brain, where higher levels of creativity, innovation, cooperation all last. And when I built these 25 businesses, I went along, I was kind of a jerk at the beginning. But as I learned the science, what I found was that the more we were able to cooperate, the more the group, the team meditated, the more we took a mindfulness approach, the more successful we were all the time. And so we could make mistakes and we weren't judgmental. We could see mistakes were just the next step to success. So it just changed our corporate cultures and changed us individually as humans.
That is amazing information. However, I'm going to say a lot of our listeners now and in the future are going to go, there is a massive amount of science. There's a massive amount of activity around this. But I want to kind of break it down to something simple. And I normally I'm trying to do complex things and make them simple, but I don't do a very good job at it. But what I'm hearing and what I loved about your explanations as we met in our workshops is imagine yourself being really frustrated and really angered and having to remember something that happened, right? So by your definition, if I have it understanding correctly, you're moving the brain from the most important part where all your memory is down to the lower parts of your brain because you're mad and you're frustrated. Therefore, you can't remember what you're supposed to do. Where were my car keys? Because you've got that frustration, kind of fight or flight mentality. The reason that this is important is that you're learning in the books and the information that you share is shared in stages. It's shared in ways that you can consume it at your leisure and at your pleasure. It's done in a way that lets you say, if you want more factual, if you're more scientific, you can get access to that. So the beauty of your book methodologies, from my perspective, in terms of feedback to the listeners, is you get as much as you want and how much you want as often as you want, the way you want it. Right. And that's actually learning the way learning should be. Right. Yes. It should be fun. It should be engaging, and it should be on your terms in the context of it's on your terms. I'm the one that's learning. I'm the one that's experiencing. And so what I love about what you actually do and bring to life in your methodologies and your courses is you bring that energy together with, oh, we're here to serve. So back to the top of the call, when we're talking about Becky and her connector and serving and being a relationship and being a fascinating person, bringing people together, you're bringing your people together, your students together with themselves and then others, because they're going to take a more relaxed state and a better understanding and a better way of learning. And so that's my quick summary of what I see in what you do. Now, in the last few minutes that we have today, we are going to talk again on Monday, which is awesome. So for those of you who liked some of this today, come back, because on Monday we've got Jackie Simmons coming in to work with JW and myself, and we're going to talk a little bit more about how this works in a very unique niche, and that's people that are distraught or suicidal, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about some real pain activities and challenges and how you have helped and worked through and how Jackie is doing that. So that's our Monday show. So just hold on, folks, because we're going to get into some real meat with those conversations. But what I also want you to do to take us home today, and what we're doing, working together, we're going to bring a book together. We're going to do educational stuff together. I'm a technician, right? And from a technology standpoint, so I get to do my thing, but I get to do it with you because we're taking yours. So my passion and my message is helping you bring your passion and your message together. And so together, that's a wonderful fit for me. But I'd like you to take us home with this. And I think we've got about 4 or 5 minutes max left. And I don't know how to end the show, so I'm going to turn it off. But I want to the very end, walk us through the categories of areas of life that this learning code in the Institute is focusing on, sans the Monday call, to help people so they can say, well, why would I use this? Where would it fit for me? Can you kind of take us home with those areas?
Yeah. Now, if people will go to our website, thelearningcode.com, I think you put a crawl up there earlier.
Yeah.
I think if they will go to that, they'll be able to see a lot. Now, I got to be honest, if you'll go to it today, it's going to be different in 3 weeks because we're adding more stuff to it.
Yeah.
But it will lay out the areas that we are using this for. So this may help some other authors. So what I did is I took an overarching concept like, how do we learn? Cracking the learning code. This is kind of a compendium. It's a big book, but you only have to read little bits of it to get it. And then when you want to get more, you can reference and go deeper. We got a very cool system in the back. There's over 1,400 footnotes, because it had to be scientific because we needed the academic community to accept it, as well as the average guy to accept it. So there was a dance that we had to go through. But what we found was that you could apply this to anything that wasn't working. You can go to YouTube. There's a video there called Cracking the Addiction Code. Some of us are born with it. I was, and my parents were. Which allowed me not to blame when I understood the science. We were born with, you have about 5 different dopamine receptors. If you have a variation of the D2 receptor, one drink is not enough. One piece of chocolate is not enough. Mm-hmm. These are addictive programs. When those genes get turned on, they fire brain structures that literally cut off a thing called the anterior cingulate that allow us to use willpower to stop eating and stop drinking. So we blame the person. We don't need to blame the person. We need to look at the biology and come up with a system that allows us to override the biology that's going on inside of them. Matter of fact, I help an awful lot of alcoholics and drug addicts personally because, I'm one, and so, or was one. So depending on how you want to look at it. I've been very blessed to be able to have a lot of these people in my life that I get to work with. But you can apply this science to anything. We have Cracking the Addiction Code coming out. We have 20 books and 20 online programs. The books are great, but we've developed a special way, really, that we can talk about next week, is helping people with trauma also, of how to slowly change the brain structures with only 3 to 7 minutes a day. That's all you need to do. You don't need any more stress than that. And literally, we've come up with a plan that a lot of people think will completely transform the way information is delivered on the web, because it fits more into our biology. Because think of all the hour-long webinars you looked at, you can't remember 3 things out of half of them, So what's happening is we get a thing called neural knockout. Too much information just keeps knocking new information out. Maybe the next segment or next Monday we can talk about that.
A little bit about that.
Yeah, but so anyway, we're in a lot of different areas. We deal with addiction, we deal with cultural transformation, we deal with cracking the marketing code, cracking the addiction code, so cracking the business development code. Because really, if our brain is not set in the correct manner, we can't do it. We call it above the line. The mindset is above the line. Everything you got to do below the line, like the tactics, the strategies, if your mind isn't set in the correct way, you're never going to do that stuff below the line. Correct. Mm-hmm. So we just look at 20 different kind of transformation areas where we apply the science to. And what I was going to talk to authors about, you come up with your overarching concept, and then you plug in little elements under it, and you can have other books if you so choose. You might only have one book in you, which is fine. Or you can have other books come out of it that are in the same genre that also fulfill what's meaningful inside of you.
Yeah, I love it. And you've done a great job of making it practical, and the lessons that you teach in your videos are phenomenal. So yes, I definitely encourage those of you who haven't seen or haven't gone to the website to go to the learningcodewebsite.com and get to know more about JW. It's been, as always, as every time we talk, sometimes on the phone, sometimes at weird hours, a pleasure. A pleasure to meet you and get to spend some time with you. And as I said, next week we'll be with Jackie Simmons, and we'll be talking about addiction, and we're talking about the things that keep us from affecting change in our brains, because our brains aren't being fed or served the right way. So in honor of Becky, I want to close with a great shout out and a thank you for Becky, that if you happen to catch the show in the end and you're freaking out because you got these 2 guys just stepping in for you, know that we love you.
We need some feminine energy here.
Yeah, exactly. I'll try. I'm trying here. I'm doing my best. That we appreciate you, and we know that life is short, no matter how you slice it, whether it's 80, 90 years, 110 years. Enjoying every minute of every day is what we need to do. Cracking the learning code is part of that. Understanding who you are as a person and human. Getting to know people like JW is an honor. And Becky, you're fantastic. So until next time, you have a great rest of your day. Bye for now.
Thank you guys so much. Bye-bye.
Take care.